Right everyone, it is Finn here and welcome back to my Euro Qualifier predictions, where today we're going to be predicting both round 5 and round 6 of the Euro Qualifiers. Now of course, as you can imagine, we have quite a lot of games to talk about in today's episode because of that. No! So of course I do apologize if I don't spend too much time on every single individual team, otherwise we will be here until the tournament itself. So of course we've got some fantastic games to talk about, so let's jump into game number 1 with Kazakhstan versus Finland. And as you guys can see, I've just edged for Finland here with a 2-1 win. Is it because it has Finn in its name? Well, maybe. But ultimately, looking at these two teams, obviously it's first and second in their group at the moment, which considering both Slovenia and Denmark are in their group, this is very, very impressive, and both teams can be tremendously proud of themselves. Obviously, Kazakhstan got that tremendous 3-2 win over Denmark, but looking at Finland, the reason I've gone for them, they've scored slightly more goals so far. They've got the top assist maker in qualifiers with Teemu Pukki, and as I said, there are very fine margins in this. It is not a lot in this competition, but I do think if there was to be a winner, it would just be Finland. Now, jumping into our next game, a slightly more convincing game with Lithuania versus Montenegro. Now, I'm sorry Lithuania, but I'm going to give you a 2-0 loss here. I think on their day, Montenegro can be a very decent footballing nation. We're looking at Lithuania, unfortunately it goes down to the fact that they're not a big footballing nation.
No, that's unnecessary.
In both World Cup qualifiers, I believe, and Euro qualifiers so far, they've gotten 0 wins. And versus, as I said, on their day, a very decent footballing nation, I don't see them getting points here, but rather a 2-0 loss. Now at least, jumping into our next game, we've got a slightly more competitive game with Czech Republic versus Albania. Now of course, I'm going to go for Czech Republic here with a 2-1 win. Looking at them, they are currently group leaders. They've only conceded 1 goal, which is very, very impressive. But I do think Albania could make this one close. Obviously, looking at them, they've only scored 1 goal less than the Czech Republic. I do think looking at Czech Republic, they'll be looking to redeem themselves after the recent Nations League. I think individual-wise, a lot of their individuals haven't been quite performing. They need to check themselves at the moment.
Nice.
I think Suchek doesn't look as good as he did a year or 2 ago. Same with the likes of Patrick Schick, maybe Sufal, 1 or 2 others. But when they do play as a team, they've done very, very well, and I think they'll get the result. Now, jumping into our next game, talking about checking yourself, we've got the likes of Poland and Poland. You have to check yourselves. Looking at recent results, once again, this is a national team that just seems to be underwhelming every single tournament. In qualifiers, they're currently second last in their group, but I am going to give them a win here, considering the only team under them is Faroe Islands, and that is who they're playing. Faroe Islands with 0 wins in qualifiers so far. And looking at the Poland national team, I would say they're almost the opposite of Czech Republic, for example. Looking at them, they've got some of the best players in world football, but they just seem to be underwhelming when they do play as a team. They just don't seem to link up well. Once again, you've got the likes of Lewandowski.
We have Robert Lewandowski.
Zielinski. I can go through the entire team. But once again, they've just been so underwhelming. But I do think they'll get a result here, and hopefully they'll get some confidence with a 2-1 win or 2-0 win. Now next up, we've got Slovenia versus Northern Ireland. Once again, another very, very interesting game. We've got 4th place versus 5th. I think there's a lot in it. I think both these two teams have potential to make it close, but I am going to have to go for Slovenia. Obviously, looking at them, I think they've been slightly more consistent and convincing throughout the qualifiers, and especially in big European competitions over the last few years. We're looking at Northern Ireland. Yes, they picked up that win versus San Marino, which is kind of a given. You can't really celebrate beating a team that has only won 1 competitive game or 0 competitive games in their entire history.
How dare you!
So once again, Northern Ireland, you're not quite playing at the level that I think you should be, and because of that, I am going to give it to Slovenia with a 2-1 win. Now next up, we've got the Netherlands versus Greece, and once again, this could be tremendously close. Netherlands currently 4th in their group, while Greece are 2nd. One thing that I think works in Netherlands' favour though, is their best centre-back that end up picking a red card. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. And I do think, looking at Netherlands, they have actually played a game or 2 less than Greece, so we can't necessarily say that they've been bad in qualifiers so far. I do think one thing that does worry me though in recent history, whether it be Nations League or qualifiers, they have struggled against the best in the world, whether it be Croatia, whether it be France. They've really struggled against some of the best teams in world football. But versus Greece, once again, I do think Netherlands have the quality to at least get a 3-1 win. Now, next up, we've got Serbia versus Hungary, and I'm going to go for a draw here. As we know, Serbia on their day can be absolutely brilliant, one of the biggest dark horses in world football, but once again, they've also slipped up a lot in recent history. They didn't do as well as I thought they would in the World Cup. Look at the likes of Hungary, though, once again, they've shown on many occasions that they can escape groups of death. They've done it versus the best teams in world football. Once again, I think this will be very, very close, but I think it'll be a draw. Now, one game that I definitely don't think will be a draw is France. Now, of course, look at France. They are one of only 4 teams to get 4 from 4 wins, or have a perfect record, should I say, so far.
Perfect.
And look at them overall, 0 goals against so far. I mean, it's really, really hard for me to give Ireland any sort of points here, because look at France once again, one of the best footballing nations in the entirety of the history of football. Look at Ireland though, I do think they have the ability to score here. I don't think that France are going to keep their squeaky clean record. Look at the likes of Ferguson. Once again, he's been so brilliant for Brighton so far this season, just picked up his first Premier League hat-trick. I do think he could get on the score sheet here, but once again, I have to give it to France. And hey, maybe they could put Thierry Henry between the posts now that Lloris has retired. I mean, he's always been good with his hands versus Ireland.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
We've got Denmark versus San Marino next. Now, once again, San Marino, 0 competitive wins in their entire history. I have to give Denmark a 3-0 win here. I mean, do I even have to say any more? I do think Haaland, though, unfortunately for Denmark, had really been the only shining star for them so far in qualifiers. I think it could work well in Manchester United's favour, though, if he gains a bit of confidence in this international break, and that he does bounce back when he returns to the Premier League. But as I said, in terms of this competition, San Marino are getting absolutely no points. Now, next up, we've got Georgia versus Spain. And as you guys could see, I am going to go for Spain here. I think overall, once again, a very strong footballing nation. No, they haven't been as good in qualifiers as you would like to think so. But once again, there's only 1 point separating them between, I think it's also 2nd and 4th or something like that. Look at Spain, they won the most recent Nations League. And I do like Georgia. I obviously like Cavacelia. I think he's an absolutely brilliant player. But looking at Spain, at the end of the day, they can put the pain in any team, and I think they'll pick up a 2-0 win. Now, next up, we've got Luxembourg versus Iceland. Once again, we've got a lot of games to talk about, and this isn't necessarily one of the most exciting games to talk about. I do think it could end up being a draw. I am saying that purely because I think these two teams are very similar at the moment. I think they match a lot of their strengths. I do think they match a lot of their weaknesses. I think they, on their day, can score a goal or 2 here, nothing absolutely terrific. And on the conceding and once again defensively, neither of these two nations strong. I think it'll be a draw. Now, jumping into our next game, we've got Cyprus versus Scotland, and of course I have to go for Scotland, as they are also one of the teams who have not lost a single game or drawn a single game this tournament. Absolutely brilliant. I'm going to give them a 2-0 win versus a nation that's gotten 0 points so far. But one factor that I would say here that could worry Scotland is the fact that Scott McTominay is injured, which, I mean, as a Manchester United fan, I don't say this often, but he's been an absolute star in this team so far.
That's impossible.
Look at Scott McTominay. I think he's scored 4 or 5 goals in the tournament so far, one of the top goal scorers. But at the end of the day, even without Scott McTominay, the Scotland national team has proven throughout qualifiers that they can be a top nation and they shouldn't lose points here. Now, next up, we've got Bosnia versus Liechtenstein. Once again, it's not very difficult in my opinion. I have to go for Bosnia here. Yes, they've been underwhelming throughout qualifiers so far, considering the kind of talent they have. But looking at Liechtenstein, 14 goals against so far in qualifiers and 0 goals for. They've absolutely had no redeeming features, and I have to go for Bosnia here. I think this is where they gain their confidence. Now, next up, we've got Turkey versus Armenia. Now, of course, look at Turkey. They are currently top of their group, which is absolutely brilliant. Which, considering you've got the likes of Croatia, Wales, and Armenia in that group, for Turkey to be top.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Top, they've really done well here. And of course, look at Armenia. I do think they are a top nation, but because Turkey have done so well, I'm going to give them a 3-2 win. Now, we've got Croatia versus Latvia next, and I'm going to give this one to Croatia. Once again, look at their history over the last few years. I mean, when it comes to World Cups, when it comes to Euros, when it comes to Nations League, this is one of the best nations in world football, and they should not lose any points to last place in their group. I'm going to give Croatia a very convincing 3-0 win here. I think they've got an absolutely brilliant squad, and they've got absolutely no excuses. Now, talking about no excuses, next up we've got Slovakia versus Portugal, and Portugal have no excuses here. Another perfect record, they've got 14 goals for, 0 goals against, but saying that Slovakia are second in the group. I do think that this is going to be the most competitive game that Portugal are going to have. I do think that Slovakia could definitely get on the score sheet here, but I still think Portugal will take a relatively convincing 3-1 win. I mean, especially with the likes of what's he now, 82-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo up front, still banging goals left, right and centre. It's just inevitable.
It's a good start.
Now next up, we've got Azerbaijan versus Belgium. And looking at Belgium, this might not be as easy as I think, considering both the likes of Courtois and KDB are out injured. Two of the highest performing players in this national team. And at the end of the day, I think people are very scared of Romelu Lukaku at the moment. I mean, he's proven very well in the Champions League final that he would make a very decent defender. So maybe he'll be the ultimate Alderweireld and Vertonghen replacement. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I still think Belgium will take this one, because looking at Azerbaijan, once again, 10 goals against so far in qualifiers. Defensively, they haven't been the strongest there. And I do think Belgium has a bit more depth than a lot of people give them credit for. I do think they'll get the results here. Now next up, we've got Estonia versus Sweden, and I would be shocked if Sweden don't take it here. The amount of talent in the Swedish international team. I mean, from Alexander Isak up front, you've got Anthony Elanga, you've got Kulusevski. Once again, the list goes on in terms of talent throughout this entire national team. And versus Estonia, they really shouldn't lose any points. I mean, at this point, you might as well even bring Zlatan back to score a goal or two for the Sweden team.
No, because lions, they don't recover like humans.
Now next up, Andorra versus Belarus. Once again, another pair of nations that I think really do cancel out each other's weaknesses and strengths. And because of that, I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. I don't see a lot separating these two teams. And I think in terms of quality, they are very similar. Now next up, we've got Ukraine versus England. And looking at Ukraine, they are not in bad form at the moment. Unbeaten in their last 3 games. But unfortunately before that, the last team that they have lost to was England. It was a 2-0 loss, and I do think England will pick up a 3-0 win this time around. Now it is quite interesting. I've heard that apparently the English FA has spoken about the fact that when Southgate eventually leaves, that they would like Pep Guardiola as the new England manager, which would be incredible to think about. But I do think a lot of England fans would be quite happy to see that kind of pressure in the team.
I'm so happy, believe me. I'm so happy.
Finally, someone who could drop Maguire and Calvin Phillips. But obviously, jokes aside, look at the England international team. They've been very, very good throughout qualifiers. 15 goals scored, more than any other nation in the qualifiers. And as I said, the victory just has to go to England. Now next up, we've got Northern Macedonia versus Italy, and I'm going to give this one to Italy. It shouldn't be too much of a surprise. I don't think North Macedonia have been terrific throughout qualifiers, which actually we know Italy. Maybe, yes, they've had their ups and downs in recent history. They don't have Mancini as a manager anymore. But at the end of the day, I still think the Italian national team, very, very strong, a lot of talent. They should take it. Now next up, we've got Romania versus Israel. Now I am going to give this one a 2-2 draw, and I'm saying that purely because looking at both nations, I do think they've got a lot of ups to them. I feel like there is a lot of quality. Once again, as I've said through 1 or 2 other games, I think both teams here really match each other's strengths, but at the same time also match each other's weaknesses. I think they've both got a lot of young talent coming through their system that goes very, very unnoticed at the moment. But ultimately, if I had to choose a winner, I would probably choose Romania. But as I said, I've just got a gut feeling that it will be a draw. Now next up, our final game of round 5 before we jump into round 6 predictions. We've got Kosovo versus Switzerland, and as you can see, one of the biggest results of this match week, I'm going to go for Switzerland with a 4-0 win here. Looking at them, they've been absolutely brilliant. No losses in Sweden's favours. They've scored 12 goals. We're looking at Kosovo. Once again, they are yet to win at the moment. And because how strong Switzerland are looking at the moment, I mean, their flag's not the only thing. That's a big plus.
Stop it. Get some help.
Looking at them overall, the amount of talent, the kind of games that they've played so far, absolutely terrific, and I have to give it to Switzerland. But of course, that does take us to our round 6 predictions now. Once again, I'm not going to take as long on these ones as I've spoken about all teams before. But looking at our first game, it is Kazakhstan versus Northern Ireland. As I said, Kazakhstan definitely in better form than Northern Ireland, so I have to give them a 2-1 win.
Kazakhstan is the greatest country in the world.
Next up, Faroe Islands versus Moldova. Once again, this is a slightly weird game. We haven't spoken about Moldova yet. Look at them. They beat Poland in their most recent game, which would, of course, give them a lot of confidence. And because of that kind of confidence, I do think they are going to get a 2-0 result. Once again, sorry, Faroe Islands, but I do think Moldova are the stronger nation here. Now, next up, kind of a Scandinavian battle, we have Finland versus Denmark, which, looking at Finland, obviously, as we know, they beat them in the most recent Euros. But saying that, once again, one of your players suffering from cardiac arrest, I think it's fair to say that your team can be slightly rattled.
Starting to get a bit shaky, you know? I mean, I'm a little bit weak.
I do think ultimately Denmark should get the result here. I do think Denmark is a better footballing nation. Once again, a lot of their star players are definitely getting older, but ultimately versus Finland, I do think this could be a very, very tough game versus top of the group, but I do think this is where Denmark truly will shine and kind of fight to get into the qualifying stage. Now, next up, we've got Montenegro versus Belarus, once again, or Bulgaria, should I say. And I do think this could be a very, very physical game, as we know both nations play very, very physical football. But once again, as I said, I think Montenegro will get a lot of confidence from their previous win, and they'll get a 1-0 win this time around. Next up, we've got Ireland versus Netherlands. And I do have to say, I do feel slightly sorry for Ireland. Obviously, look at them playing the likes of Netherlands and France in 1 week.
Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry.
It just isn't a very easy time. As I said, I do back the likes of Ireland to be a very good footballing nation one day. I think they've got a lot of brilliant youth throughout their system. But versus Netherlands, I think Netherlands will gain confidence in their previous game. I think Ireland will get a knock from their previous game. And Netherlands will take this one 3-0. Now, next up, we've got San Marino versus Slovenia, and I'm so sorry, I feel bad every single time I make a prediction video, but I'm just never going to predict San Marino to win.
Well, fuck you.
Well, I guess I can't say that. But until they pick up a win, once again, it's very, very hard to give them a win. And I am going to give Slovenia a 1-0 win here. Now, we have Lithuania versus Serbia next. And although I think Serbia would have drawn their first game in the prediction video, I do think they'll pick up a 3-0 win this time around. Once again, still an absolutely terrific footballing nation. I can see them getting at least 3-4 points throughout the qualifiers so far, in this match week at least. Once again, absolutely top footballing nation from defense to attack. And looking at Lithuania, as I said, just not a very strong footballing nation. Next up, we've got Albania versus Poland. And once again, this could be a very, very close game. Obviously, if Albania win this one, they go 6 clear of Poland. But as I said, I think Poland will win their first game. Because of that, I do think that they will get a lot of confidence. It all depends whether they defensively crumble or not. But ultimately, I do think Poland have potential to get a 1-0 win. Now, next up, we've got Greece versus Gibraltar. And looking at Greece, obviously, once again, they've done very well in the qualifiers so far. They are currently ahead of a lot of top nations at the moment. And I am going to give them a 3-0 win here, which is a very, very strong result. I feel like they're very under the radar at the moment in terms of the talent that they have. And looking at Gibraltar, 12 goals conceded so far versus a very, very strong attacking Greece team. I mean, Greece's attack has been absolutely phenomenal. I do think they'll get the result. Now, next up, we've got Armenia versus Croatia. And I am sorry, Armenia, although, once again, I do like you guys as a footballing nation. I'm giving you 0-0 wins so far this match week. Looking at Croatia, once again, one of the best nations in world football. As we know, absolutely brilliant in the recent Nations League. I mean, the list goes on and on in terms of how good I think Croatia are. And I would be surprised if they didn't pick up at least a 2-0 win. I mean, they've got such a beautiful mix of veterans in the squad, a brilliant mix of youth players as well. And once again, I'd be surprised if they didn't take it. Next up, we've got Latvia versus Wales. And looking at Wales, only scoring 4 goals in qualifiers so far, showing that maybe they do kind of miss Gareth Bale a tiny bit.
I don't need to say anything. It's a waste of my time.
I didn't think they would miss him this much. I mean, obviously, he's a legend. He's the reason they went to the World Cup in the first place. But ultimately, I do think Wales have been struggling at the moment. But Latvia is definitely a nation they should get points again. And I'm going to give them a slightly small win with a 1-0 win. Next up, we've got Slovakia versus Liechtenstein. Once again, has potential to be a semi-close game, but as Slovakia are currently unbeaten so far in the Euros at the time of recording, and once again, Liechtenstein, 0 goals for, 14 against. I'm going to give them a 2-0 loss. Next up, we've got Iceland versus Bosnia, or Portugal versus Luxembourg, sorry, should I say next. And I'm going to give this one to Portugal. I've put a 3-1 win here, but I'm tempted for a 3-0. But you know what? I'm going to give them a 3-1 win here. Once again, I'm expecting a very, very convincing win. I think they've got so much momentum in there, although they've got a lot of aging players in their squad. Once again, they've got some of the best young players in world football at the moment. And once again, I would be surprised if they lost any points here. Next up, we've got Iceland versus Bosnia, and I'm going to give this one to Bosnia. Once again, I think Bosnia on their day can be a very, very good footballing nation. And although, yes, Iceland potentially can be as well, they obviously got that big win versus, I think it was Liechtenstein or Lithuania, Liechtenstein in the beginning of the qualifiers. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I do think Bosnia are a stronger footballing nation and should take this one 2-0. Next up, we've got Switzerland versus Andorra, Spain versus Cyprus. Sorry, I'm absolutely everywhere in this. We've got like 50 games to talk about. But looking at Spain versus Cyprus, once again, gigantic 4-0 win here. Looking at Cyprus, once again, they really should be deflated after all the losses they've gotten so far. Looking at Spain, as I said, the most recent Nations League winners. Once again, they've got some of the best young talent in world football at the moment. They just stole the likes of Yamal, obviously from the Moroccan national team, only 16 years old. The Spanish national team, once again, they've got so many reasons to be excited, and they really should absolutely blow this game out for water. Now, next up, Switzerland versus Andorra. And once again, I've spoken about it, Switzerland, a very good football nation at the moment, and they should pick up a 3-1 win. Next up, we've got the likes of Romania versus Kosovo, and I am going to give this one to Romania with a 1-0 win. I spoke a tiny bit earlier about the fact that I think there's a lot of young players coming through the system at Romania at the moment, and I do think they can be very decent, where unfortunately at the moment, Kosovo just aren't a very decent nation.
Ooh, you're hard, showing off.
Next up, we've got Israel versus Belarus, and I am going to give this one to Israel. I think the difference here, in my opinion, is the defensive ability. I think Israel has been slightly better defensively, and looking at Belarus, once again, conceding so many goals, especially in that game versus Switzerland, and I just don't have a lot of faith in their defensive ability. Next up, we've got Sweden versus Austria. And looking at the Sweden national team, I think versus Austria, they could take this one. Obviously under Rolf Rangnick, which once again, as a Manchester United fan, I never thought I'd say this. They've been a very, very good team.
You all laughed at me.
Obviously, Austria drew to Belgium. We're looking at Sweden, though. They've scored 11 goals in their last 3 games across all competitions. I do think this could be a very, very high-scoring game. Obviously, Austria won the last time these two teams played, but I do think Sweden will take this one 3-2. Now, next up, we've got Norway versus Georgia. We've got Erling Haaland versus Kvaratskhelia, and I do have to give this one to Norway. It was a 1-1 draw last time they played, but once again, looking at Norway, they've just got so much talent. Once again, Erling Haaland scoring for fun once again, and I just think they are slightly better, and they will take it. Next up, in our third last game of the episode, we've got Italy versus Ukraine, and I am going to give this one to Italy. Don't get me wrong, I think this is definitely a game that could go either way. I was very tempted to go for a 2-2 draw, or even a Ukraine win here. I think Ukraine have a very, very decent squad. As we show, they've got a lot of fight power, not just in the nation itself, but in the football team. But ultimately, once again, the talent that Italy have and the ability to prove themselves after the most recent not qualifying for the World Cup, obviously winning the previous Euros. There's a lot on the line here, and I do think they'll take it. Next up, we've got Malta versus North Macedonia here. And this is a very, very weird game because I don't think North Macedonia are as strong as they used to be. But looking at Malta, 4-4 losses, an absolutely imperfect record. I would be surprised if North Macedonia didn't get the points here. Now, jumping into our final game of the entire episode, which I need to catch a breather after this. That was a lot of games to talk about. But Belgium versus Estonia, and I have to give it to Belgium with a 2-1 win. Once again, I do think it will be close due to the lack of having Thibaut Courtois between your posts. I mean, the man used to take up the entire goal itself, not having the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, but they do have a lot of talent. I'm excited to see what the likes of Jeremy Doku, the new Man City winger, does in a game like this. But ultimately, once again, Belgium should win it. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for my Euro predictions for the qualifiers for both round and round 6. Once again, it is a lot of games. I had to do a lot of research for this. I am sorry if I missed any kind of facts or details. Once again, if I did, do let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, let me know who you support in the comment section down below. Once again, I'm always excited to see where the people who watch my videos are from. So of course, do let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Cheers. Bye.